asked you both to pick your clips which kind of for you encapsulate the way that this election is playing out. Now, Anne-Marie Cox, let's see your clip first.
Have you even read the United States Constitution? I will gladly lend you my copy.
Anne-Marie, why did you choose that clip?
Well, there's a few reasons. First of all, it's a clip of an immigrant family of color and that, of course, has become a very big issue in this election, both people of color and white supremacy, as well as immigration. Second of all, I think that clip shows how there's sort of been a reversal of poles when it comes to which party is associated with being pro-America, which party is associated with patriotism, love of country, as well as which party is considered pro-military, for that matter. And then I also think it's really significant that one of the most emotionally resonant moments of the entire campaign has come not from someone involved in the campaign, specifically didn't come from Hillary Clinton. One of the most powerful arguments for her presidency came from someone else besides her.
Right, well, let's...
And then lastly...
Hang on, before we go into that in any more detail, let's look at your clip, Josh.
We did discuss the wall. We didn't discuss payment of the wall. That'll be for a later date. And Mexico will pay for the wall. They don't know it yet, but they're going to pay for the wall.
And Josh, why does that clip encapsulate what's going on for you?
Well, so that the second part was not from a later date. It was from several hours later on the same day, and it reflects how Donald Trump has had this idea that he can basically change his mind and change his statements on any topic as quickly as he wants, say whatever he thinks is best for the audiences that he's in front of, and sell both of them on the idea that he's on their side. And this has been a fixture of his business career going back 40 years, but I think he's been learning, and the reaction to his flip-flop on the wall that we've seen this week is that people notice what he says in front of both of those audiences, and that it is in fact catching up with him.
But I wonder now, looking at the way that certainly here, the media tends in a way to look at Trump as a kind of cartoonish figure. But as the campaign goes on, and he has been cutting through, albeit his approval ratings are dipping behind Hillary Clinton's, we have underestimated his power to get to disenfranchise, or at least to feel, for people to feel enfranchised by him.
Well, I think he was underestimated a year ago. I think now he's not underestimated. I think Clinton had the right formulation that, you know, you don't have to take him seriously, but the prospect of his presidency you have to take very seriously.
Well, Anne-Marie, looking at these candidates, both candidates, in a sense, this time around, we don't have a kind of hero candidate, if I might call Obama a hero candidate. They are both flawed candidates. How does that change the way the campaign goes?
Well, I think that both of our candidates are heroes to some people. There are a lot of women in the country that probably do consider Hillary Clinton a hero. She will be the first female president. But I do think that this is a campaign largely of negatives. They're the two most unpopular candidates we've ever had. And I think that is one of the reasons why this race has turned so nasty. And it's turned into arguments against the other candidate even more than any other race that I can remember. I also feel like, you know, I want to speak to the caricature of Trump and whether or not he's a cartoon character. I think that is a danger for all of us in the media, because he can seem kind of ridiculous. But this election, I can't think of an election in my lifetime that's had as high. And I chose that clip of Mr. Khan is that I really do think that our Constitution is under threat in this particular election. I think Donald Trump proposes a existential threat to American democracy, really.
But actually, Josh, if you look at you know, how what he says goes with different communities, then let's take something like the wall and the row that's developed today on Twitter between himself and the Mexican president and so forth. You know, it seems to be a complete disconnect between what he's saying, what the Mexican president is saying, but it doesn't seem to damage Donald Trump. He is very resilient.
Well, I think it's because Donald Trump has never been about policy, and the wall has never really been about the wall as a physical structure as such. It's about being tough, standing up to these outside forces that Trump and many of his voters blame for their troubles and what they perceive as the troubles of the United States. And I thought that trip to Mexico actually went quite well for him, in that for whatever reason, the Mexican president was extremely gracious to him, sought his presence in Mexico City, was just only politely rebuked him for the fact that he spent much of his campaign vilifying Mexico. And so I think Trump got what he wanted out of that, which was a demonstration of strength. And I think his voters are not holding him accountable line by line for, oh, he said he'll implement this policy. This election isn't about policy. Trump makes the right enemies for them. They perceive him as standing up to them. And part of what I found so frustrating about covering this election as a journalist is how contentless it is. I agree with Anna that the election is important, but it's not important because the two candidates have put out different visions for what the government should do when they're fighting over that. Is that they have two different visions of what America ought to be and who has real claim over America. So that's an important conversation, but it also tends to be a pretty stupid conversation.
Well, Anna, I wonder, looking at the tenor of Donald Trump's comments in Mexico, and indeed the toning down and his new team and so forth, if we are going to see more toning down, as it were, in Trump's manner in the next 6 weeks.
I think you're going to continue to see this bifurcation that Josh's clip pointed out. I think he's going to continue to try to do, daytime Trump and then Trump after dark. I think that he's going to try to talk out of both sides of his mouth. And I think that it's true that some of his closest, most ardent fans don't really care that he's doing this, because as long as he sends the signal to them that he is still the same person that they thought he was. And I think that has to do, quite frankly, with a lot of bigotry. Right. And I think as long as he sends that signal that he is still that person and still has those feelings, they're willing to let him be, do what he needs to do in order to win.
Josh, just to finish on that question of, and I think Trump said as well, he was the Brexit man. A lot of the establishment here, Mr. Brexit, he called himself. A lot of people here from the establishment underestimated the vote to leave the EU, and it might be, in fact, that the establishment in America, inside the Beltway, has completely underestimated his ability to turn out the vote on November the 8th.
I don't buy that comparison. I realize that almost everybody expected the Brexit vote to lose. I expected it to lose. But half the polls that were conducted on Brexit in 2016 had Leave ahead of Remain. So I think there was groupthink that was ignoring polling evidence out there. Here in the United States, nearly all the polling has had Hillary Clinton ahead. Well north of 90% of the polls that have been conducted this year have her leading. Even now, as the polls have tightened a bit, it's about her being ahead by 4 instead of by 8. And presidential elections in the United States in recent decades do not go by enormous margins. 8 would be a real blowout win, the biggest one since 1984. Even a 4-point win would be a very solid win. So I think people in the establishment here in the U.S. do have good reason to believe that Hillary is ahead, because she has been ahead through almost this entire thing.
Thank you both very much. And of course, we've got the debates to come.